All right. Welcome to Geopolitics in Conflict Breaking News. As a matter of fact, guys, I wanted to give you an update regarding the virtual call that took place yesterday between Vladimir Putin and President Xi of China. And what does it mean within the context of a geopolitical landscape? So that is the reason why I wanted to do it. I'm happen to be by myself today here. So I'm going to go over a few interpretations as to what it all means, just to keep you up to date so you'll have a better understanding of the big picture. What was interesting about the call, the virtual call yesterday between Vladimir Putin and President Xi, is that Vladimir Putin categorized the relationship as a true example of how relations ought to be in the 21st century. And I'm going to use the exact verbiage that Vladimir Putin used, and I'm going to quote it as Putin said. He said, I regard this relationship as, and I quote, a sample of genuine interstate cooperation in the 21st century. So that is very interesting concept, and I am not going to focus on the language part of it because that's not my area. That's for Elizabeth and Ross to deal with. But I'm going to focus on at least provide you an explanation of sort, or interpretation of sort, or analysis, whatever you want to call it, as to what it all means. But of course, the meeting came right after Vladimir Putin went to India physically, traveled to India. Now, again, what's interesting about that is that during this year, Vladimir Putin only did two trips. One was with President Biden in June or July, the summit. And the second one that was supposed to take place was postponed, and that trip was supposed to be to China. However, in the case of India, President Putin decided to physically travel to India. Well, why is that, you may ask? Well, it's a geopolitical move, shall we say. The reason being because Vladimir Putin wants to pull India away from the United States. That's a better strategy to do it. And how he sweetened the pie, shall we say, is by offering, a confirmation of the S-400 missile system, which only few countries have. And by the way, that S-400 missile system, India acquired over the objection of the United States, which tells you what? That India also is playing both sides. And rightly so, they're going to have to think in terms of their own interests. On the other hand, India also sort of cut a deal with Russia regarding some economic ventures. Some of them has to do with oil and so forth. And I remember Elizabeth and we talked about this to a degree. But to highlight this within the geopolitical moves that Russia is doing, because we all know the tensions, shall we say, the cold one between India and China. So Vladimir Putin's trip to India, there is now a possibility that he could bring both China and India together to sit down and have a talk. Why is that important, you may ask? It's because that's usually the role that the United States used to play a couple of years ago as sort of a mediator. But the United States kind of lost its credibility. So now Russia is stepping on that front by playing the mediator between those two major countries. And that is very, very significant. That is so. But to go back to the virtual call between Vladimir Putin and President Xi, the strategic partnership between China and Russia is very significant. And I remember a couple of years ago, I wrote an article in which I argued this particular point, that the Russia-China alliance basically will provide both countries, Russia and China in this context, the right platform on which they can further their cooperation on all fronts, including the military. So there are those who say, well, will Russia share the sensitive information with China? Or will China share the sensitive information with Russia? Yeah, they might not do it right now, because the relationship is moving another degree or another level, shall we say. That kind of shared technology, especially in the military, it comes up later after you strengthen the ties, after you sign a treaty, shall we say. But the important thing that the both leaders came forward with was their joint efforts in sending a message to the West that Russia and China, stand together against the West, which is very significant, because here is my take on that. There is no certainty, of course, about how the global geopolitical landscape might look like moving forward. We all know one thing for sure, that it is not a unipolar system anymore. But what we know with certainty, however, is that Russia-China alliance will further contribute to a precipitous shift in the global order and further decline of the US share of the global power. Now, that is very important, because you need to understand what does it mean on the global stage, shall we say. And this is where I always mention the term, and I'm sure you heard me a couple times saying this, about the shift from a unipolar to a multipolar system, which means now the multipolar system is not managed only by the United States. Now it's managed by the Russia, China. And this is a reality that the West, as I always say, is having a hard time accepting. We had this conversation yesterday with our guest, Dr. McCoy. As a matter of fact, we brought it up to the questioning for him, and he kind of shared our opinion and assessments. That is indeed where the world is moving towards. So that is very significant. Another aspect to understand about this virtual call is that we're all aware, and I remember posting this on my Twitter account, as far as how NATO is pushing towards the Black Sea, towards Ukraine, and so forth. And to me personally, and this is my personal opinion, is that this call, or this strengthening of a relationship between Russia and China, suggests that China is saying quietly to Russia, we will stand by you. That is the significance that I read into all this, because both countries are experiencing the rising tensions from two different fronts. One of them is in the Black Sea around Ukraine, which is Russia, and the other one in the South China Sea, which has to do with Taiwan and so forth. So they figured joining together will be much better for them strategically than operating individually. And this is where I say, for certainty, that the alliance between Russia and China will further contribute to that precipitous shift in the global order. Okay? Another aspect that I wanted to talk to you about, or bring your attention to, it has to do with the financial sector. Both leaders talked about, Vladimir Putin and President Xi, they talked about start thinking of developing a financial system in which they can bypass the SWIFT system altogether. No. Why is that important? You may ask. Well, yeah, because the United States uses sanctions, mainly in the financial sector, using the dollar. That's how they can control. The whole reason for why the Bretton Woods system existed since 1949, with using the financial tool as one of its mechanisms by which to control countries, it has to do with the strength of the dominance of the US dollar. Now, Russia and China are now in talks about, and I am not surprised personally, once again, because I wrote about it 3 years ago or so, and I said, because I started to see the trends of where this is going. And basically, as a matter of fact, even Myanmar yesterday mentioned that starting in 2022, which is only a few months from now, or a month from now, so they're going to be dumping the US dollar and using the yuan. So basically where I see it going, and again, that's something I kind of processed in my head 2 or 3 years ago, it's that Russia and China now is going to be trading or transacting in their own currencies. And what is the importance of this, you may ask? Could Malaysia be the next joining them? Could Indonesia be the next joining them? Could India be the next joining them? Iran, or even Saudi Arabia for that matter? So you can just see, this is why I always say, you always, when it comes down to geopolitics, you have to think in terms of the bigger picture. And as we always say, you learn this if you focus on international relations and so forth. Context matters. So, Russia now and China talking about this financial mechanisms by which, as I said, they're going to bypass the SWIFT system altogether, which means what? Rendering the US dollar useless. Of course, let's be realistic. This is not going to happen overnight. This is not going to happen tomorrow, because to build the financial system by which you're going to be transacting takes time. But the fact that they are already now talking about it and is going to be developing that infrastructure, it says, or it provides an indication for what lies ahead. What I found surprising about this, a couple of weeks ago, it was a statement from Saudi Arabia. Well, if you know Saudi Arabia, you know about its oil production, that is. Saudi Arabia threatened the US to sell its oil using a different currency. Once again, we all know the petrodollar. That's why we call it the petrodollar, because all the oil transactions have to be conducted in the US dollar. That is the deal the United States cut with the Saudis from way back. This is where you always hear oil for security. That was one of the deals for that one. But to go back to this issue of the financial aspects of it and why it's very important, when you consider that the wealth has already shifted from the west to the east, which means the predominance is in Asia, not in the European Union, not in the United States. The wealth has already shifted. So if China and Russia moving forward into these directions, they're paving the way for the next decades. And when you take into consideration, for example, ASEAN countries, a $2.3 trillion economy, 30% of the global population reside there, you can just see where the hegemony of the US dollar will be irrelevant, because it won't exist once Russia and China figure out a mechanism by which, all the countries in the region can transact in a different currency beside the US dollar. Now, there are those who are saying, well, in this case, because ruble might not be as strong as the yuan, some have said, well, the yuan is going to become the global currency. I don't see that happening. And this is, again, my personal opinion. Even though the yuan is part, or either is in the global basket of currencies, but China is not after that at the moment. They're not after that, because there are a lot of headaches that comes with becoming the global currency. I mean, when you consider the case where the United States, the state of our economy, because it's raising alarm around the world for just about anyone looking beyond the stock market. I mean, you look at the inflation rates, and we always talked about this one, guys. We always mention how the true inflation is so high that the government is not being honest with the American people. I mean, the feds are lying about it. So, the Secretary of Treasury is lying about it. They use the term transitory. If you notice, we don't hear it anymore, because now inflation is here to stay with us. And it's reality, as sad as it is. But they are not coming forward with being honest about it. But so then you start to question now, for Russia and China moving forward in this direction of establishing their financial infrastructure, well, of course, it has nothing to do with us, our domestic issues, because for us in the United States, we have two main issues that have contributed to the weakening of the US dollar. One of them is quantitative easing, or QE, which means printing of money. And second one is the inability of the government to control the pandemic. Straightforward. But Russia and China, they don't care for this. What Russia and China care about is the idea of to remove the strangulation, to remove themselves from the strangulation of the US dollar. That is the main aspect as to why they wanted to do it. It has nothing to do with our domestic issues. Those are for us here to deal with. So, and this is where I personally see, again, when you think about geopolitics, you always think of the tools that are used to influence certain directions as to where you want the outcome to be. And here is the interesting part, and I'm going to share it with you. The interesting part is that as we speak right now, there is a high-ranking official from the United States government is on his way to Moscow. All of a sudden, we want to have a conversation with Russia, after sanctioning them, after going back in our words, after, pushing NATO eastward, even NATO now having a conversation about, I don't even know why NATO is talking about expansions after the Warsaw Pact ceased to exist. So both countries, Russia and China, at least in this virtual call, this cementing that relationship and sending a strong message to the West and to the US for that matter, to truly, get it and get on with it, whether they like it or not. And this is why it's very, very important for you guys to understand those dynamics. Now, to some average Joe, average Jane, it might not mean a thing, but some of us observers of international affairs, global affairs, this is very significant. Because personally, and I speak for myself here, personally, this is an indication for what lies ahead as far as how the new multipolar system is going to be managed. Not by the United States, because we lack credibility. We don't need to detail more into this because we all know how it is. And even the European Union now, I just find out that the European Union is considering strengthening its own currency, despite what you hear. And we're going to be mentioning this tomorrow. So I wanted to touch this issue or bring you up to date regarding this issue when considering what's taking place. Secretary of State Tony Blinken is in Southeast Asia. As a matter of fact, he's heading out to Thailand, if I'm not mistaken, on Saturday or tomorrow, maybe one of those days anyway. Then there is another conversation regarding Cambodia and Laos. Well, why Laos comes in the picture? Because Laos just received the delivery of this high-speed train from China. So you can just see. And to me, the behavior of the United States through its foreign policy, it's an indication. Because first of all, one, it is a fragmented foreign policy that has no vision whatsoever. And second is we are in a geopolitical, what should I call it? Fortress, It's kind of wilderness with no vision as to which direction we're going to take. And this is a clear indication of why you're seeing a U.S. foreign policy that is chaotic. I always used to argue, as one who worked in Washington, D.C., and I'm very familiar of how the system works. I used to argue certain points about, for example, the Iraq war back then. Why you need to invade Iraq? You guys do not understand the complexity of Middle Eastern culture, religious tensions, ethnicities, linguistics, and so forth. Even though I was told that, it'll be an easy walk in and out. I said, if you get in, you are not getting out in the next probably 15 to 20 years. And that stems from the idea of understanding how fragmented our foreign policy is. And I see, again, the same mistakes is happening right now with what's going on right now. So here we are sending a high-ranking official from Washington to Moscow. What do you think is going to accomplish? Nothing. Russians are not dumb. They're smart enough to know. They're going to listen to what this high-ranking official will have to say, but they're going to shrug their shoulder. So what? It's because we can be saying one thing and doing another. This is one of the key issues when it comes down to foreign policy. Once you lose your credibility, it is so hard to recover from that. That is one of the reasons why, for us on this channel, as we grow, we're trying to bring this understanding to the masses for them to start to have at least an independent outlet that can provide them facts, because we want to provide you facts, and you guys can decide, as Ross and Elizabeth always say, you guys can reach your own conclusions. We are not here to make the conclusion or to reach conclusion for you, so you can reach it out. So the bottom line to this, guys, is I wanted to provide you this update for you to understand the phone call, the virtual meeting or call, whatever you want to call it, that took place yesterday, December the 15th, between Vladimir Putin and President Xi. It's another indication of cementing this relationship between the two super or major powers, shall we say. Pardon me. The other aspect has to do with the financial, because as we all know, when it comes down to foreign policy, financial tools are used part of that. We used it throughout the 70s, the 80s, or even the 90s, or even today, we're still using it through sanctions. Now with China and Russia moving into this direction, you're going to start seeing how they're going to be moving away from the strangulation of the US dollar, which means the bottom line to it will become useless. So once again, guys, this is not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. It's going to take time because you need to have a financial system. What I do see happening from an economic perspective is that once this system is set up between Russia and China, you're going to see more countries rethinking their approach to the US dollar. Most countries usually are after economic prosperity. I can see it right now when it comes down to ASEAN country. This is why Tony Blinken is in Southeast Asia, but ASEAN countries are smart enough to know which direction they want to go. Do you want to go with economic prosperity that's going to benefit your country? I look at two examples, Indonesia and Malaysia, two incredible countries, and yet their governments, and I'm going to say it straightforward, being corrupted the way it is, rather than working for the sake and the benefit of the Indonesians and the Malaysian people in both countries. So they're going to have to think now hard enough to say, I'm sure in the case of Indonesia, they're going to be thinking about the history of what they had with the United States back in the 70s. So that might come to the front. It may or it may not. However, the bottom line to it is they're going to be thinking about economic prosperity. This is where I see it going with these financial aspects of it. So that's what I have to say to you guys, because I wanted to update you on this. Oh, I do see. Gordon, thank you so much for your super sticker, Gordon. Speaking of super stickers, we truly appreciate this. I want you guys to know, on behalf of the entire team, that means a lot to us. It's the gesture that counts. It's your thoughts, the consideration. It means a lot to us. We are independent. We don't have any, I'll say sure, we don't have any financial backing from any. We want you to know this. What we're doing is just Elizabeth, Ross, me, and there is another person behind the scenes here. That's about it. So what you see is our own resources, the basic stuff. But also because we're thinking in terms of, we wanted to bring you the true information, the facts that we want you to know. And this is why we are moving into this direction. So your support means a lot to us, and we want you to know how much we appreciate it. So speaking of support, so remember to check out our membership at geopoliticsinconflict.com. And speaking of our membership, tomorrow we're going to be doing a presentation for our members about the new global military order. Yes, I will use the term, and I feel comfortable using this term, the new global military order. There are some aspects we're going to be addressing there with our members that touches basically on Russia, China, the US, around to a degree, India to a degree, but for the main major powers around the world and what it means for how things are going to move forward. So for our members, look forward to that presentation tomorrow. And for you, just check out our membership. Darren, Arnie, Thank you very much, Darren. We truly appreciate it. Your support means a lot to us. We want you to know that. So for you who have not checked out our membership, please go to geopoliticsinconflict.com and check out our membership and see what we offer there. So also, we want you to know that check out our new community at Locals. Now, go to www.geopolitics.local.com. Yes, we are now on Locals, which means what? We can talk freely. And we got a lot to share with you. You all know about Locals. I am sure you're familiar with it. You know, it's because you all know the censorship, how it is. It's real. Censorship is real. I would have never thought I would be saying this in a country like ours, so-called the beacon of democracy. And now this is what we're witnessing. You know, it's so easy for them to turn it off just out of, quick, because they didn't like what you're saying or they didn't like you to say the truth. What happened to that honesty? What happened to the facts? And this is why we decided, we launched our local community. So please go check it out there, www.geopolitics.local.com. We're going to have, Q&As there. We're going to have live conversations where we're going to break down the topics beyond what you can even imagine. Why? It's because it's censorship free. We can just talk, and we're going to be talking. And we got a lot to share with you. So also remember to follow me on Twitter at David Walalu and follow Elizabeth at Alchemy of E. We've been posting stuff. I post on my own account. She posted on her own account. But we all have a conversation with. And I truly appreciate, I've seen on my account a lot of conversations, decent conversation, or conversations that is. I want to say to all of you, to my followers, I want to say thank you for your continued civil discourse here. It says a lot about you, and we want to bring the conversation forward. This is why we are deciding to do what we're doing, and this is why we're going to have this local community that we hope you can join us on a local, because you will truly, truly enjoy it. So remember, tomorrow, remember to join us for live stream tomorrow at 1100 hours. So I think Elizabeth already posted the topic on it. Check it out. We're going to be talking. I also have some information for you for tomorrow from previous week, where you asked some questions like, for example, did the president of Taiwan did have a PhD? So you will be shocked as to what I found out. And I'm going to share that with you tomorrow. So we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And as always, stay informed. Till next time. Bye-bye.